my 24 years working for the city of Winona, I got the chance to know Bob Bollant, so I was happy to work on his biography. This biography is divided into several sections, which I will describe briefly. Bob's background, floods and the dike system, developing the valleys and the elevated water system, the wastewater treatment plant, the central garage, dredging Lake Winona, the Winona Municipal Airport, Max Conrad Field, and an interview with Dr. George Bollant.
I went to Iowa and worked for the city of Des Moines for a little over a year, and then I worked for a consulting engineer. And best thing I ever did. And we covered the center third of the state of Iowa from Missouri border to Minnesota, and did work for a small town, small city. A little town of Montfort. I grew up on a farm. Montfort, yeah.
Wisconsin.
Yeah. And
there.
yeah. And first of all, I was going to be a Catholic priest first. I went to high school years of studying in a seminary, and then I didn't want to be single all my life, so I dropped out and broke my mother's heart. But I farmed for 3 years with my dad, and then went in service for 2 and got into engineering work. And I come out and decided to go to engineering school and at Platteville. And no, I drove back and forth for a couple of years, then got married. I was married and lived in campus or on a trailer park the last 2 years. But I worked in Iowa. I worked for this consulting engineer 6 years, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me. It just worked your tail off. You'd come in and plop a job on your desk and said, "Do this."
Located adjacent to the Mississippi River, flooding has been a problem in Winona for many years. Bob Bollant was very instrumental in getting a dike system created in Winona.
In the 70s, it's hard to explain. We were having a flood on the river. It started in 65, 67, 69, 71, 73, 75, 77. Every other year we had a flood. And, that was a headache. And then we were all ready to go, 1972, but then they passed this social environmental law that we had to do environmental impact statement, which included the Indian relic study. It took us 5 years to do that. And hired a lot of consultants, a lot of study. That was all federal funded, and I don't have a real good cost on what that was. But the federal...
This took a long time.
Yeah, mm-hmm. So the federal government funded 100%, funded that, but I was just coordinator here from the city part of it. And I did the work with the guy that actually come down. We actually walked a lot of that. And I told him that what was here, what the land had been used for, and that sort of thing. And he did a real thorough study, but we didn't find any Indian relics.
Located adjacent to the Mississippi River, flooding has been a problem in Winona for many years. Bob Bollant was very instrumental in getting a dike system created in Winona.
Well, the 65 flood, the city built the dikes themselves. The city hired contractors, and then in 69, it was the city started out building the dike. It's like a lot of dike was built in 65, and then a permanent project was underway at that time to go down to Frederick Mall, and but it wasn't. The city raised that. The city went in there with their own contractor and raised that, and then put temporary dikes. But downtown, from Levy Park down to Hamilton Street, and from there up to Watkins flooded in 65. That whole area, Watkins had water like that around them in 65. Well, in 69, we built the dike down through Levy Park and protected them. And we started on that project, and the Corps come in and took it over for us about halfway done, and we just I had to get the easements for all the easements, and the Corps actually built that. But it was what happened. The city was developed with the sawmill industry in the 1900s, and along the riverfront there's 17 feet of sawdust, and that all had to be dredged out, taken out, excavated out when they built the dike. They filled it in with sand for it to have a solid footing for the dike. So that's what we had. The 69 flood was maximum, but the city could hold it. We'd get boils on the land side and they just water just boil up out of the ground because of that sawdust. And then we'd bring it with sandbags, and you go look where the sandbags in the morning, water would be up to here. That was kind of scary. That would be Walnut Street, the end of Levy Park, all the way down to High Forest. High Forest. That was all the old sawmill, built by sawmill. They had sawmills all along there, a lot of sawmills. They floated the logs down from northern Minnesota down the river, dredged it out of the river, put it on a barge, and then would bring it in and load it on from the barge right into the...
How long did that take?
That project, the construction started in 79, and we ended through 85, 6 years. Ran 6 years. $35 million, that was a $35 million project. Now that went down to Riverbend Industrial Park, wasted it, that was a waste site there.
Some of that went there too?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we knew we dredged over the top of that, but that land, they know that, and it's not as valuable as where it was all filled in with sand.
The closing of half the railroad crossings in Winona and adding signals to the remaining open crossings was a major safety initiative.
Big project we did, Fred, was Milwaukee Railroad. There's a Milwaukee Railroad down the main line through, and there were 34 crossings. On signal, only about 2 or 3 had any signals. And the Department of Transportation was saying we're going to close half the crossing, but we want the city to take the lead on it. And all right, I said, fine. I said, you still tell us at a meeting that you're going to close these crossings. No, we can't do that. We got to leave that up to you. Well, I had to come in and propose to the council we're going to close half the crossings. And the council said, we're giving in to the railroad. We're giving in to the railroad. And they'd rant and rave at the meeting. And we'd have to have the meetings up at St. Mary's College that drew such a crowd. It was like we'd draw a couple thousand people at a city council meeting because everybody, that was affecting a lot of people. But it worked out that people who were on streets where the railroad crossing was closed really liked it, really, when it got done. And then we signaled that the project included money to signalize all the open crossings, so that's when we put all the railroad crossings. People were getting killed. There was accidents, a lot of accidents. People getting killed in those, and then there'd be lawsuits on it, and I hated those those hearings from railroad accidents.
So you're talking?
We did that in 78. They closed, there was 34 crossings and they closed 17 of them. In there, Hamilton stayed open, but from Mankato all the way up to, to Beer Street. And then put signals in. It got signals on the open crossings, which really a lot more safer. About 35 trains a day go through here. Wow. So that was a big project. And Amtrak put some money in that, and the railroad, Milwaukee Railroad, and city put money into it, but 90% was federal funds, highway safety funds. It was several $1 million project. I'd say about $3 million. It had a good council. God bless me, but I always got along with the council well. And then they kept giving me more departments. I was just city engineer, and I liked that. I liked doing the engineering. But then they turned me into a manager or a director of public works. So then we took a fellow under me and made him city engineer finally, and that separated the two departments somewhat. And so blessed, I got along good with it. I really got along good with the council. And the people who were department heads here under the old boards, they liked that. And I came to a change right away, so I was submissive to the city manager and did what the city manager told me to do, and the council, where the ones that were under the board, they thought, no, we can tell the council what to do. Well, it didn't work that way. That's why I was so blessed I got along good with the council, and I knew that they were the boss, and what they said went. And then it works two ways. They trusted you so, and they'd take my recommendations and I didn't have to fight with them.
The Winona Commercial Harbor, operated by the Port Authority of Winona, has uses including loading and unloading of barges for commodities such as fertilizer, salt, and coal.
We dredged it out. We found out the fleeting city with port was just starting to develop at that time, so we dredged out an area where they could store the barges. And then later on, the city bought the land along Riverview Drive, and we did more dredging, made more areas for barge fitting, goes all the way down to the river there. Now some of the tows, that was all dredged out. We did that, and we filled along Riverview Drive, and that's where the grain elevators are, and the museum, and all that land. That was quite a project too. It took quite a while to get permits for that, but that was a good project. With the museum, yeah, but that was a city contract. We drew up the plans and let contracts, and we were fortunate. There was 2 dredgers in the area. They're both out of La Crosse, Robers and Kurtzman, and so we always had good competition. And I worked with them.
In some of the newer housing development areas in Winona, an elevated water system was created, which pumped the water up the bluff to a reservoir, which then provided pressure to the homes.
The city is wedged in here between the bluff and the river and doesn't have a lot of development area, but we went into the Knott Valley. We had developed Knott Valley. We did that, and what happened as you go up into the valleys, we give above our water system, our water system serving the city, or it serves, so you have to elevate it. You have to pump it up, and then we build another reservoir. So we did that with Knott Valley, and then Valley Oaks. You know where Valley Oaks is, and then Windcrest. But that's entirely separate water system up there. We drilled separate wells up there, but we ran the sewer. The sewer ran up the bluff. We ran the sewer up there, and it comes down and.
The City of Winona Wastewater Treatment Plant services the cities of Winona and Goodview. There was a major upgrade between 1997 and 99.
But going back to that wastewater treatment plant, then that'd have been a nightmare if the city would have built a treatment plant. That was a plan that was on board. They had a report on board, just a report. When they came here, they're going to build it down there by the knitting mills along the riverfront, and there would have been odor problems, and it would have been a headache. But it went all the way down on the land that the city owned, where Shives Road, where the plant is. We had to dredge it in, but that it just worked great. And what happened was there was only a 33% federal grant on line, and it was going to be a $4 million project. And the city didn't have a sewer service charge by that time, so we put one into effect. But there wasn't any history, so we couldn't sell bonds. So we had to get a federal loan to build that project because we couldn't sell bonds ourselves because we didn't have a history of our sewer service charge. But then what happened? We just got into the project, and the state decided to chip in with 25% grant, and the federal government matched that. So we ended up with an 83% grant instead of 25, and on a $4 million project, that really made a big difference. And, well, we had to pay the 17% out of $4 million.
Okay.
Yeah, Shives Road that was always there, and that was our access down to the new wastewater treatment plant. Sure. But that was all subject to flooding in the 70s there, and it would get flooded and we couldn't get to our treatment plant, so we did Huff Street. That was a brick street, and we did that from Sarnia Street to 2nd, and we took that old brick and asphalt, and raised Shives Road up 3 or 4 feet so we'd have access to our treatment plant.
Winona's Central Garage is the headquarters for maintenance of all city vehicles and serves as a base for the street crew, treat crew, and aircraft maintenance. And it's also a fueling station. It was constructed between May 1974 and completed in February of 1975 and had a dedication by U.S. Senator Hubert H. Humphrey.
Yeah, Central Garage, we didn't have every department, that's when they're under boards, they were going to private mechanics, and it wasn't any control, wasn't any coordination. So the council decided we should build a central garage, and we built that central garage and bought the land from the railroad, bought land from Chicago Northwestern, And then that's when the council got the idea we should have a public works department. And we did the study and put it together for the council, and they adopted that and then made me public works director. That was 1974. And then all the mechanics, everything was done through the central garage. All the police work, fire department, all the boards, park board, and it was all the mechanical work was done at the central garage. Most of the equipment was stored up there in that one building. And we got in. At that time, there was federal government was giving grants to cities, and that was mostly a federal grant that built that project in 1974. We put that in operation. Hubert Humphrey came and dedicated it for us.
The dredging of the east portion of Lake Winona that occurred between 1999 and 2001 greatly improved the fish habitat by eliminating 30% of the shallow weed beds. It also created fill to be used in the River Bend Industrial Park.
Lake Winona, we dredged Lake Winona. It took us 22 years to get the permits. We did 3 different environmental impact statements on that. But we had a good relationship with a fellow at the college, Cal Fremling, and he wrote the impact statements, and he was really pushing dredging Lake Winona project. So we dredged Lake Winona and filled 130 acres, 150 acres of River Bend Industrial Park, Fleet Farm and Menards, all that. We dredged that whole, that was all swamp, or we filled it 8 feet. Yeah, but we didn't dredge anything out of the West Lake. It was all out of the.
You didn't dredge anything out of which?
The West Lake. That's all silt. The sand is so deep, we can't get to the sand. But we dredged. The East Lake is 200 acres, and we end up dredging with, done. We had about 70 to 80 acres that were dredged.
I had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. George Bollant, who operates the Winona Municipal Airport, which is part of City of Winona, which is under the Public Works. So George had worked with Bob Bollant for part of his time.
I want to welcome you and everybody else that's seeing this to Max Conrad Field, Winona, Minnesota, where Max Conrad, the flying grandfather, who has done just so many records, some of which still stand, and the airport was dedicated to Max in about 1951. Bob Bollant has been a very, very important part of this airport. First, well, I think it was 1968 when Bob took over as the Director of Public Works, probably then called the city engineer at that time, and part of his responsibility was here at the airport. And through the council and the mayors over the years, along with city administration, and of course Bob Bollant, who the airport falls under, have been very, very supportive in helping us be part of Winona. Bob was instrumental in many of the advancements that happened up through 2001. This airport originally had just a 4,000-foot runway run by a Winona native, so that's kind of a nice thing. But Bob's been here for all of 68 and beyond. The industrial park that you see here comes off of the airport original property that the federal government set up. The old airport, for some of the people that remember, before Bob's time, before my time, was over where now you see the Zesto is, where the drive-in theater was, is where Max flew out of originally. But Bob was very, very instrumental. This airport is funded by federal monies and by state monies, and then some support by the city. To give you an example is in 2015, it was not when Bob was in charge, but the 2015 project here, some components were funded 95 to 100% totally by the federal government and by the state. Some components had only 5% contribution by the city. Okay, and that was true back into Bob's era. And Bob and I met actually when I first came here in 1968, and then several operators were in effect at that point in time, one of which was called Winona Aviation. Bob's philosophy, and he conveyed it to the council, and the council and the mayor and the directorship of the city manager, etc., have been very, very supportive, because this airport is an economic impact to the community. And Bob made multiple proposals, from establishing T-hangars, we call, for individuals to store their airplane, to pavement improvements, to instrument landing system improvements here at the field. Our position is, when people call in for weather advisory, we welcome them to Winona, Minnesota, the island city. And that's where we sit. And Bob has been there, right there for us all along. And he's had that vision. And that single T-hangar is now gone to 5 T-hangars, okay? And we are about 2 hangar openings left with permanent people in it. So it's going back and forth, and those T-hangars were funded by the state. 80% of that money was state money to build that T-hangar, and then the revenue paid that off, so 100% cash flow was going on. Now, that can't happen all the time, but that's our mode of operandi, to be there for the community. And we want to thank, personally I can thank, for the years that we've been here since 1997, the mayor and the city council and all of the administration that's happened, and especially the director of public works. And the longest one that's been here is Bob Bollant,